Hello, students. Welcome to the second to last video lecture for Healthcare Ethics, Fall 2020. So we are almost done. It's very exciting. This lecture is going to be a fairly short one because I'm asking you guys to watch a film this week. And I want you to dedicate your attention to the film rather than to me talking to you on YouTube, okay? So what I'm going to do in this lecture is introduce the film and talk a bit about Angela Davis, whose work we are reading this week. Then I'm going to go over a piece of the worksheet, which is important for your op-ed assignment. This week's worksheet is super necessary, okay? I know we're approaching the end of term and everyone is tired, but this week is not a good week to skip the worksheet because I'm asking you guys to do a portion of your op-ed assignment in this week's worksheet, okay? So you're going to be telling me your ideas for the assignment, and then I can get you feedback, which will help you with your writing, and hopefully you'll be able to write some of it in advance over Thanksgiving break, because I know that things are going to get really crunched once we get into December, okay? So this week, make sure you do the worksheet. Always do the worksheet, but especially do it this time, okay? And because it took me a little bit of time to figure out how to get the film up on Blackboard for this week, and because this video is going up on Monday rather than Sunday, you guys have an extra day to complete your worksheet this week. Hooray! So your worksheet for this week is due on Saturday, November 21st by 11:59 p.m. All right? So you get one extra day for this week's worksheet. This lecture and this week's worksheet covers a documentary film by Renee Tajima, which is called No Mas Bebés, and a chapter from a book by Angela Davis. And the chapter is titled Racism, Birth Control, and Reproductive Rights. Both of these texts have to do with the history of involuntary sterilization in the United States. I am asking you guys to think about this history from an ethical perspective. So the Davis chapter for this week is 13 pages long, and I strongly encourage you to read the whole thing. But I recognize that this is a different genre of argument than most of the things that we have been reading this semester, and that your time at this point in the semester is limited. So I have also posted an excerpt from the chapter, which is only 5 pages long, and this is the part that you really need to read. So if you are one of the people who is watching this video lecture, you get the pro tip that you only need to read the excerpt, okay? And you will find a link to the film for this week in the course materials folder on Blackboard, just as you did with the episode for Angels in America that we watched a couple weeks ago. If you have any trouble viewing the film, please send me an email and let me know, okay? So the documentary that we're watching this week is about women who were coerced into receiving tubal ligations. When you watch it, I want you to be looking for specific failures of the ethical concepts that we have learned so far this term. In particular, with an eye towards the worksheet, you should be looking for paternalism, autonomy, and informed consent, okay? So No Mas Bebés is about women who were sterilized during childbirth without full knowledge of the procedure and without properly consenting to it. The film makes an argument that they were sterilized in the name of population control, and this parallels the argument that Angela Davis makes in the reading for this week. When we studied informed consent earlier this semester, we talked about how proper informed consent is not reducible to obtaining a signature from the patient, that it involves the patient being able to understand the information that is presented to them and make a rational decision about that information free from coercion. This film documents situations in which women signed consent forms under duress. So they signed the consent forms when they were in labor, and they were told things that were not true regarding the consent that they were given, that the doctors wouldn't deliver their babies unless they consented, that they wouldn't be given pain medication unless they consented, that they were consenting to cesarean sections when in fact they were consenting to tubal ligations, right? Often there was a language barrier and other factors that inhibited their understanding of the information. Some of these factors we might classify under the term paternalism, right? So under the idea that the doctor, acting as if they were acting in the best interest of the patient, didn't fully reveal the situation to the patient. Okay? So when you are watching, pay particular attention to the descriptions that the women give of when they were signing the consent form, what they were told, how the doctor spoke to them, and what they understood about the situation. The film documents a court case in which the women who are depicted in the film sued the hospital on the grounds that they were not properly informed and that they were not able to make a free, rational decision free from coercion, right? So they sued on the grounds of a violation of informed consent, as well as a violation of their civil rights. So reducing informed consent to a signature on a form, in this case, represents a failure to respect patient autonomy. So when you guys are watching, also pay close attention to what happens at the end of the film. The women in this film don't actually win the case, but because of this case, the laws in the state of California were changed, laws regarding informed consent for sterilization. Okay? So you are also reading Angela Davis's chapter, Racism, Birth Control, and Reproductive Rights, from her 1981 book, Women, Race, and Class. Davis is a Marxist thinker, which means that she is someone who is writing in the same philosophical tradition as Foucault, who we read 2 weeks ago. You can see this in the full version of her chapter through her use of history rather than theory to support her argument. So remember, Foucault was giving us those 17th century plague documents, right? And Davis, in the same regard, deals with 19th and early 20th century history of women and reproductive rights in the United States, okay? So you should also know when you are reading this that Davis is writing not long after abortion was legalized in the United States. We are reading her work in a moment when abortion rights are yet again under threat, so it is worth heeding what she says in this regard. Davis makes a distinction between abortion rights and pro-abortion sentiments. Abortion, according to Davis, looks like freedom to white feminists, but it also looks like a dangerous necessity to feminists of color because of the history of eugenics. So eugenics is something that I write about in my research, so I'm going to give you a short explanation of what eugenics is, especially in case you don't read the longer version of Davis's article. And it'll help you understand the stakes of her larger argument. So eugenics, etymologically, comes from Greek words eu and gen. And eu means good, and gen is related to birth and breeding and reproduction. So eugenics means literally good breeding. It is a theory for achieving human perfection by manipulating human reproduction. So it sounds a bit sci-fi when you put it that way, but it's actually a really old theory. It was invented by a British guy named Francis Galton in the 1880s. And he argued that genius was hereditary. And he had this idea that good people, in quotes, good people, so, what he thinks of as good people are smart people, rich people, and beautiful people, that those good people should have more babies so that they can breed faster and breed out all the bad people who are dumb people, poor people, and ugly people. So he doesn't want any more of those people. He just wants lots of the good people, and then the human race will be entirely made up out of these good people, right? And when he proposed this theory in the late 19th century, lots of people got really excited about it, right? And other people took it a step further by arguing not only should the good people breed faster, but we should prevent the bad people from breeding. So hence the involuntary sterilization that you guys encountered in our readings for this week. This comes out of the negative eugenics end of the tradition. Okay? This is also where the Nazis get their idea of racial hygiene from, i.e. killing off all the Jews, right? So their goal, the goal of the National Socialists in Germany in the mid-20th century, was that they were going to make a eugenically pure society. So it just so happened that they defined good people as German people and bad people as Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, disabled people, mentally ill people, and political dissidents, right? So the Nazis wanted to kill off all the bad people to prevent them from breeding and to encourage all of the good people, the German people, in their understanding, to have lots and lots of babies so you would have a society that is entirely made up of these good people, right? So you can see that the problem with eugenics is that the good of good breeding is always relative. It's just what the people in power think is good. And likewise, the bad, or the dysgenic, the poor breeding, is also just what the people in power think is bad. So you should also know that eugenics was very influential in the United States in the early 20th century, and that it was strongly class-based. So the good in the American context was generally the wealthy, and the poor were generally the bad. Because of the historical effects of structural racism in the United States, the bad poor people were also very often people of color, or immigrants in the case of this video, right? So Angela Davis makes an argument through historical evidence that the birth control movement in the United States is all tied up with eugenics, right? And this is historically true. Margaret Sanger, one of the most powerful proponents of birth control in the United States, was strongly influenced by eugenic ideology, right? And so abortion looks like freedom to middle-class white women because they are the good people that are supposed to have lots and lots of babies in this ideology of eugenics, whether or not they want to, right? So this is forced reproductive labor. And sterilization looks like a liberated refusal of reproductive function, right? So the white feminists, when they are clamoring for sterilization rights and for abortion rights, they're saying, I don't want to have your babies ever, right? That's what sterilization looks like from one perspective. But from the other perspective, sterilization looks like an enforced denial of reproductive freedom, right? So abortion looks like coercion to poor women and women of color within the United States because they are often defined as the bad people, the people who aren't supposed to have babies under the ideology of eugenics. And they likewise don't get a choice in the matter. So sterilization looks like coercion and deprivation here. It looks like the voices of people in authority saying, we don't want any more of your kind. Don't make any more babies, right? So you can see that this two perspectives on the same argument are governed by this ideology of eugenics that oppresses different groups of women in different ways, right? So this is what we call in feminist theory intersectional feminism, the idea that other categories like class and race stratify the experience of being a woman in society, right? You don't need to know that for the sake of this week's reading, but it's a useful theoretical term to have floating around, right? The larger argument that Davis is making here helps us think about social justice, which is a term that we have been developing a definition of in this class, in relation to feminism and reproductive justice, right? Okay, so that's all I'm going to give you on Davis for right now. We can talk more about her on Thursday. But I do want to address this week's worksheet. So the worksheet this week has one big question that asks you to think about the ethics of involuntary sterilization in both the reading and the film. Okay, so all you have to do is that one question, but you also have to do a piece of your op-ed assignment. So the second part of the worksheet asks you to write a pitch for your op-ed assignment. And basically what you need to do is write a paragraph, approximately 200 words, that says your idea, the thing that you are going to argue in your article, okay? The pitch for the op-ed will let me know what you're thinking about for this and help me make sure that you guys get on track for the writing assignment, okay? It's also going to get you started writing because it's important that you start early on this assignment. So the op-ed assignment is a big one, right? It's 20% of your total grade for the course. So it matters that you start thinking about it early. And once you send in your pitch, next weekend, I can read it and give you feedback that will help you write your op-ed, okay? So that's it. And as always, if you have questions or concerns, please send me an email or bring them to our class on Thursday. All right, take care.